A lot of people can try to bring you down, and they can try to turn your vision. But if you're determined and you're motivated, you're gonna achieve where you're pursuing.
It's all about determination and motivation. If your motivation is strong enough, nothing or nobody can hold you down. So don't let anyone hold you back or set you down on anything.
Well, at the end of the day, you're the one that's in control of your life. I do think that it is honestly important to have good mentors, and have a good support system. Having that support helped me, graduate the way that I did. So we don't come together to support each other. We're going to be missing out on those people who could be lawyers, who could be doctors, could be engineers.
Can you tell us, what are the most in-demand skills?
The skill set I'm about to say is arguably the single most important skill set in STEM. And I would say that's the ability to...
But nobody asks a question like, how do you stay poor?
You are watching the Fortunate Mindset Podcast.
Today's quote is, if you always win without trying hard, you will expect everything to be easy. But if you've worked through tough times to succeed, you will be stronger when you're faced with challenges.
Yeah. Oh my. That reminds me of this book by Stephen Arnold. Hard Times Create Strong Men. There's a quote that he says in that book. He says, if I can read it here, he says, tough times create strong men, and then the strong men create easy times. And then the easy times then creates weak men. But then those weak men, they create tough times all over again. So it's a cycle. It goes back and forth. It's an interesting book that I read. On just personal development for men in general.
That's really great, because you really have to learn how to work with tough time, because if you don't work with tough time and challenges, you think like everything will be easy, and when you think like things are easy, you create tough time.
Right.
So hey everybody, welcome back to the Fortunate Mindset Podcast. We are so excited and glad to see you back, and we really thank you for supporting us and for everything that you're doing. Today's episode, we will talk about something really special, different, because our guest is so smart. I mean, Taylor, can you tell us a little bit about our guest?
Today we have a great topic. We're going to be speaking on STEM. So science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
Yeah, for sure.
Like in the shirt. Yeah, I know a lot of people refrain from STEM.
Yeah.
So, psychology majors, we're not bashing you. Communication majors or anything of the sort. Art majors, no problem. But here we want to encourage youth to pursue more careers in STEM. So whether it's in nursing, in the medical field, in the engineering field, mathematics, everything. So here today we're going to be speaking about STEM, and we have a very smart individual, as you said, that's going to be able to enlighten us and tell us various different paths, but just specifically about the STEM industry and the opportunities that are within STEM, and also the challenges that are in STEM as well.
That's great. When we've been thinking about this topic about STEM, I was like, bro, getting science, there's math inside. Technology, there is math inside. Engineering, math. And then you add up math again.
There's already math in that.
That's a lot of maths.
A lot of people refrain and are scared of that.
And then I was like, you really should be so smart enough to get to that field. So I just reminds me that there are just some people that are so natural and so smart enough that you cannot even compete. And the reason why I'm saying that, because some people can be in like a secret competition with you without even knowing, only because they feel like you have something that they don't have, and they just want to bring you down. But what they don't know is trying to compete with somebody else that you don't know what they've been going through is pointless.
It is.
Because the challenges, the problem that that person faced, you might not be able to face them. So why did you choose to go in STEM first?
Yeah. So I'll preface it by saying, a lot of different people have a lot of different reasons, for going into STEM. But for me, since I've been really young, I've really enjoyed math. I really liked how there's, a right or wrong answer. There's some, math, equations where there are multiple solutions, but, the whole solution set is the right answer.
Yeah.
That's kind of opposed to, kind of English or history, like we ask, hey, why did a specific war start?
Yeah.
That it's important to understand all those things. And, I was, relatively good at, understanding that too. But there's still a lot of like ambiguity there. What kind of attracted me to STEM is at least, in the beginning and in simple terms, it can be pretty, black and white. I will say, as you start designing more and more kind of complicated systems, the ambiguity of, hey, what's best, that actually, like, what's the right solution, that kind of goes away, when you're trying to factor in like budgets and time constraints and, different missions that you're trying to, execute. And so, yeah, for context, currently now I'm an aerospace engineer. But the aircraft that's right for one mission might be a helicopter. The aircraft that might be right for a different mission might be, like a business jet. For certain missions, you might need a fighter jet. The right answer isn't necessarily always obvious, even in STEM. But what kind of drew me initially to it was the objective nature of at least the basics.
Yeah. So Rashaun's a very good a buddy of mine, a colleague that I've been familiar with for the last year or so. Very smart individual.
Yeah.
No, take us on a journey on how you became an aerospace engineer, as you said. Take us on the highlights of your path, educational path.
Yeah. So maybe to start even before my path exactly, my dad was actually an aircraft mechanic in Guyana in South America. And when my parents moved to the United States, we were in New York, and my mom got into dental school. And so we moved to Maryland, and that's where I grew up, and graduated from that area. And so I, grew up in a household that, valued kind of, aircraft and, just kind of STEM and STEM reasoning. And so that, was kind of one of the things that let me know that, hey, look, this is something that's cool. And this is something that I could definitely, get into. I also grew up across the street from NASA Goddard in Maryland, the Goddard Space Flight Center. And so, my parents would take me to, a lot of different like events that, their visitor center would have. And, in school, I always asked a lot of questions. Hey, why is this the case? What happens with this nuance? Hey, are there any more, subdivisions, what I mean, to like what's going on? And so, when my parents would take me out to these different events, I got to actually meet NASA scientists and engineers and actually,
Cool.
ask them these questions and, talk to them about some of the stuff, that I was learning, in elementary school, right? But they, treated me with respect and, they actually liked a lot of the questions and that I was asking. And it actually got to the point where in middle school, they were actually inviting me to speak with them to the general public about different science concepts and different kind of NASA missions that were going on. And so I think that was kind of one of the real, highlights of my like real young kind of, STEM interest, getting to do all those different events, getting to participate in them, and then kind of also getting to be on the other side and, getting to learn, getting to build those relationships with, real scientists and engineers, at NASA. What's interesting about this, though, is I ended up going to a private school in the DC area. It's a bit of a funny story. It was an all boys school, and I would say being like the average like eighth grader, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to go to an all boys school. And then it was also really far away from where I live. It was about an hour drive. What's it called? We had to wear a suit and tie.
Oh, wow.
But it was honestly, and it was also, really expensive to go. But it's a bit of a long story, but I ended up, parents made me apply anyway. They actually liked me a lot. and gave me a pretty big scholarship. And so my parents were like, hey, look, and now you're going. So I went there. I played sports there, and this is kind of goes into my STEM journey in a second. So I played sports there, and while right now you see me, I'm pretty big, like 6'2", 180. When I started high school, I was actually 13 because I had skipped kindergarten. I was really good at nap time. The teachers saw this and were like, "Hey, you got to get this guy into first grade." I also knew a lot of my timetables and stuff already. That might have had something to do with it too. But moved me up on to first grade. But so I was always one of the definitely the youngest kids, growing up. And so at this school, I was 13, 5'7", about 106 pounds, and I was playing football. And one Saturday morning practice, I was taking snaps at running back, which I shouldn't have been. And also I was maybe the like third or fourth receiver on on JV, and so out of like 8. So I was pretty decent, at my size. But anyway, I was taking snaps at running back for the scout team or something like that. And on a handoff, I got picked up, slammed into the ground head first. And then instant headache.
Instant.
That was the
concussion.
End of my football career, like right then and there. But to make matters worse, I actually ended up having like constant headaches for the next, I want to say like 2.5 years. I had doctor's appointments the rest of high school after that.
I thought you might be scaring parents that want to put their kids into sports.
Well, football is very, very dangerous. My parents, I think, regret. I mean, they warned me. They might regret letting me do that. But I mean, it actually ultimately ended up working out. And I'll kind of get to that later. But you guys were talking about the quote about tough times creating strong men. When I was going through elementary school, middle school, a lot of the schoolwork was just easy. I didn't have to study. I just paid attention in class, showed up, did well. That was kind of it. But once I went to this pretty prestigious high school, and I had this head injury with all the mental things that were kind of going on with that, the mental kind of like setbacks, that caused. I had to develop, actual study habits, and, unfortunately, I wasn't failing any class. So they started me off in, some of their more, advanced classes, even relative to my grade. But I wasn't doing well, like academically, like kind of all B's and C's. So it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't bad enough to like, fail me to like raise this, huge flag. But then, it wasn't really good enough to like, get into like MIT or like Harvard or, the other places that, a lot of, my classmates ended up going to. And, some of the people I went to like elementary school and middle school with, ended up, where they kind of ended up going. What that, what I kind of learned from this, kind of head injury thing was, like I said, helped me develop these different study habits and, things of that nature. And so, it's a long story, but my dad eventually ended up finding a bunch of therapy for me to do to help me, kind of get over the effects of this concussion.
That's good.
And let's see this. So, injury happened my freshman year. By the start of my junior year, my dad found all these therapies and things like that. But it ended up being like a 4 days a week kind of deal. And my school was like an hour away. So I ended up pulling out of school to go do this therapy. But, my dad found an online school for me to do and still get to kind of take my EP classes and try to keep up with that while I'm, getting better. And so I actually ended up doing pretty well. I was, doing like AP BC calculus, so the Calc 1 and Calc 2, AP Chem, AP US history, things of that nature, while I was recovering. And, I got well enough by, the end of junior year to actually get, only 4s and 5s on that, AP exam. So, I get, college credit from that. But, my high school, when I try to go back the next year, we're like, hey, yeah, you would get this college credit for it, but you didn't do it with us. So you're going to have to, redo your whole junior year. And I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. And then there's some also other kind of things from the school that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And maybe we'll get into that, a little later. But I decided, hey, you know what? Let me just stay with my online high school. But they ran out of, calculus courses for me to do, right? Calc 1 and 2, most high schools only go up to that.
That's true.
So I actually ended up taking class at the community college.
Okay.
So, I was, 16 taking, calculus 3 and, differential equations,
God.
engineering physics 1, engineering physics
That
2.
is advanced.
And
16?
yeah,
16.
but and I actually I did pretty well, honestly. But my the funny thing is had I stayed at that school, the whole time, or well, sorry. So maybe let me finish the story. So yeah, did all that stuff. And then interestingly enough, though, I didn't get into any of the big schools like I mentioned. I didn't even get into the University of Maryland as a freshman. So what I did was, I stayed at my community college the year after high school, and just took kind of more classes towards an engineering degree because that's what I wanted to do. Wanted to do cool stuff with airplanes, and I was not going to let that setback
Sure.
hold me back.
Hold you back.
And I will say it was honestly really disappointing, you know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, like, I know the people that are getting into, these like really good schools. And, I'm like, hey, if they gave me a chance, you know what I mean? I know I do well there, but, just wasn't in the cards for me. But what's interesting is, I spent 1 year at my community college. And then the year after that, I was able to transfer to, my state school, which, at the time was a top 10 aerospace program in the country, as a junior. So they didn't accept me 1 year earlier as a freshman, but the next year they accepted me as a junior because, they weren't looking at like the whole high school thing, just only like my college coursework. And so what's interesting is, had I, gone back to my, private school, I wouldn't have gotten all that college credit. They might have, let me do some of the more advanced stuff, maybe, but I wouldn't have gotten college credit because I would have done it through a high school. But because of that head injury, ultimately I ended up doing a lot of like, college level work, and it actually had me graduate college an extra year early because now I only spent 2 years at the university and 1 year at the community college. So, got my aerospace engineering degree, in 3 years,
my God.
which, what I mean? Usually it's, 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, my head injury and like the lessons that I learned, managing that, ultimately helped me in the long run, and it helps me, now at work, to take better notes. It's helped me, just have a kind of better empathy for people, with kind of what they're dealing with. And so, yeah, I guess to, keep a long story long, right? That was kind of my path, here.
I mean, your story is really a motivation and an inspiration too at the same time, because so many people can go through that kind of situation and just decide to give up. They said, I've got this setback. So that, as Taylor has been saying, it does. We don't say this to kind of scare anybody or anybody to feel like, oh, I'm not gonna go pursue my career as a football athlete or something like that. Things happen. Even as an engineer, you can start like building aircraft or plane and stuff. So you might get a tool like on you, hit your head or something like that, get it as constant headache and stuff. So in every field or every domain,
So
you will
interesting.
find all pros and cons. So, but what I love the most is you didn't let that set you back or hold you down or anything like that. You just decided to go ahead and pursue all this college. You even went to the college because you would say, oh, I wanted to go to Harvard or those big schools, but I didn't get a chance to. I can just live my life like that. But you say, okay, let me go to the community college and then try to get advanced courses, private school, and all of this stuff. That was really huge milestone and really great. So is that why it's kind of funny question, but is that why you decided to get into weapon integration engineering?
No, that's a different story. But before I go into that, while my story, is, a testament to my fortitude, I definitely owe a lot to my parents. Like, my mom too, but especially my dad for, like helping make sure that I kind of stay on that path because, there were times where, I've literally had like the head of a math department, at my private school telling me like, hey, like, I don't think you're smart enough to do X, Y, Z. And I'm just kind of like, wow, like, I'm like, hey, me at like, 14, or so 14, 15, I'm like, well, I mean, she probably knows what she's talking about. She, works with really smart people all the time. Maybe she's got some idea. But my dad was one of those people that's kind of like, hey, definitely don't listen to her. If she's not going to let you in whatever class, we're going to go, this other route and we're going to, put you where you need to be. And my point is I ended up getting a perfect score on that, like, AP exam. She said I wasn't good enough to do. So,
that same thing actually happened to me. I remember my calculus 1 teacher. I was in the beginning of the courses, we were doing limits and things. I was struggling, and we're doing also derivatives. I was like, it was tough. So she told me, I don't think you're gonna be able to go far in engineering and things like that. And then whenever I transferred from the community college, I ended up passing that course. But just to prove her that I'm making it. Whenever I was applying for my job. I asked for her to give me a job recommendation. Into the dream job that I was going into, so that she can see that he's making it. It's I know a lot of people can try to bring you down, and they can try to turn your vision. But if you're determined and you're motivated, you're gonna achieve where you're pursuing.
Sure, it's all about determination and motivation. Especially if your motivation is strong enough, nothing or nobody can hold you down or like put you down to go and pursue what you really want, because nobody else can see what you want in life. People can want good for you, your parent, your friend, your family, your loved one, all of them, they want good for you, but that's good that they think it's for you, it might not be good for you. It might be the good they think is good for you, but you are the only one who knows what is good for you. So don't let anyone hold you back or set you down on anything. So
Sorry, no, something that I'll add to that is, while at the end of the day, you're the one that's in control of your life. I do think that it is honestly important to have good mentors, have a good support system, especially because like, with me, maybe I still would have been an engineer, had my dad not, pushed me to, keep up with, the math level that I was at. But you know what I mean? Having that support, helped me, graduate the way that I did, and so that's kind of one of the reasons why I do like, kind of mentoring, other people, trying to make sure that, hey, I'm a support system for some people that maybe didn't necessarily have one. And trying to help them, achieve their goals. I hope that I'm not like misquoting something, and I shouldn't even be trying this, but like I think I remember, I had to read Malcolm X's autobiography for English in like 9th grade or so, and I think he mentioned that like he wanted to be a lawyer. And he might not, and I think he mentioned how he might have not been a civil rights activist had one of his teachers not, discouraged him so heavily from pursuing law. And so, he obviously had the ability, right? But if we're not, if we don't, if we don't like, come together to support each other, we're going to be missing out on those people who could be lawyers, who could be doctors, could be engineers. And so, hey, at the end of the day, yes, you're responsible for your path. I do think it's important to still have mentors and, good support system and stuff like that.
I agree with that.
But, I can get back to your question. Sorry. Yeah,
no, you're good. You're good. Now, bringing to that part of being a mentor, helping people to really achieve and go through. So, can you tell us, like, what are the most in-demand skills that people need in STEM to be ready for, job market?
Yeah.
The skill that people can prepare themselves to really be ready to be professional, either when coming freshmen from college or from university. So what are those skills?
Yeah, so this is actually so STEM is an incredibly diverse field, and so I don't want to scare anyone with what I'm about to say, because ironically, it's actually not one of my skill sets. But I would say that the skill set I'm about to say is arguably the single most important skill set in STEM, and I would say that's the ability to like develop software. So like understanding how to code, understanding like the software development process, and and I can do kind of like a minimal amount of coding, but a lot of the like university recruiting that I've actually gotten to do for a couple different companies, the thing that most that we're most looking for are these like computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering kind of skills. And so I would say that that's definitely, the most in demand thing. Not to scare anyone because, in the medical field, right, that it's super in demand. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know too much about nursing, but, we just had this pandemic. We all need, nurses. And I was going to say, other sorts of engineering, like I studied aerospace engineering. I didn't necessarily do that much coding. And, I'm still doing, pretty well in the STEM field. But if you want, in my opinion, like the safest bet to have, meaningful, STEM employment, I would definitely say kind of going down that like software development kind of route.
Yeah, if I can add to that, and this is not only for engineering. This is just like in the word STEM itself: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, for everything.
Yeah.
I would say critical thinking is extremely important. Just to be able to resolve problems on your own, problem solution. Well, even beyond that, having communication skills is extremely important to just be able to interface with different teams and work cross functionally. And it's the relationship aspect of a person that really helps whether you're going to advance in your career and become a vice president, manager, and go up in your career, or if you're just going to stay in low. But that's really a differentiating factor, and it's the same case in the medical field and any other field as well, not only in engineering.
I love that. Talking about all this field, so let's go to the right whereby if you can talk about we're living in the time where AI and machine learning is really going so high and so fast. So how can STEM prepare students to really be ready and to immerse themselves to those technology in AI and machine learning?
Yeah, so I think it's actually a combination of what Taylor and I just mentioned. Actually,
Yeah.
AI and machine learning are two subsets of computer science, computer engineering, and so learning that you're going to be learning the actual foundations of the AI and machine learning, and then also pursuing a STEM degree, to some degree, you have to be able to critically think to be able to, finish it off. It's not necessarily just, hey, memorizing, facts. It's, hey, this is a problem, and we might word this a way that we've never shown you before on any of the homeworks, but you have to be able to apply what you learned to be able to solve it, on the test. That kind of goes across, the STEM. You know what I mean? Like that's for all STEM majors. But so that mix of like, hey, if you're in STEM, like specifically, you can specifically study AI and machine learning. But even if you're not specifically studying it, that critical thinking, that problem solving skill, those problem solving skills, the skills of, hey, being able to communicate information, between people. Like maybe you're not the machine learning expert, but maybe you end up being like a manager of the machine learning people. You have to be able to learn enough to be able to communicate with them, but then also understand how the work that they're doing is like, translating into like finance and like, all those sorts of things too. So yeah, I would say that answer your question again, you can literally learn AI and machine learning, through computer science, and then STEM degrees in general just prepare you with like, critical thinking and, communication skills, especially with like, group projects and stuff like that.
Great, great. Talking about critical thinking, communication skills, and all of this stuff. So, somebody can be out there and ask themselves, like, how can I develop critical thinking and communication skills? So, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start with the easier one first. Communication. I think with that, I'd say like perfect practice makes perfect. So just, try to, kind of communicate more in your daily life. Maybe, if you're out on a walk, in the park, maybe approach a stranger, ask them their thoughts about, something. That's giving you a chance to, develop your communication skills. Maybe don't start with a stranger, maybe start with like a close friend or something like that. But you know what I mean? You can kind of work your way up. I tend to talk to a lot of strangers, as, some people might, you might know who are watching this. But that's kind of what I would say for the communication piece. The critical thinking piece, I would say, I think by doing the STEM degree, like, a real STEM degree, you're gonna have to do it,
Right.
with your, like, tests and homework and stuff like that. But something that I find kind of fun, and this kind of also goes back to the communication bit. But with a lot of my friends, we actually just kind of discuss, different like philosophical topics.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we even kind of debate or like argue for things that we don't necessarily agree on, but we just kind of argue to, help keep our logic sharp. And so kind of like, playing, devil's advocate, for lack of a better term, that kind of helps, helps your critical thinking. Because even if you don't believe it, but you understand, the other argument, coherently enough, that really, I think, helps build those kind of critical thinking skills as well.
Okay. If I can add on to that,
Yeah, go
especially for communications, I would say people that are in college, university, or even in high school, take on roles, leadership roles that can put you in a position where you need to present in front of people. You need to be in front of an audience and meet and set up meetings, lead meetings. Those types of roles will put you in a position where you have to be able to communicate, and just networking in general as well. So for critical thinking, take on projects and lead those projects too, external from just your coursework. So when you're taking on certain projects at the university that a certain professor might have a research or something of the sort, you're adding more on top of your critical thinking. It's good.
So what if somebody says like or don't they don't say, but if somebody's kind of introvert, right? They cannot talk even to the dear people they know. They might be like they want to stay in their room using their phones, right? They don't feel like want to talk to somebody, but they want to get into STEM. And you say like if you want to get into STEM, you have to get a good communication skill, critical thinking. So for critical thinking, we get that. So I'm an introvert. I don't know how to. I don't really feel like I want to talk to people too much, but I want to develop that communication skills. Where can I start?
Yeah. So, I've got a lot of my close friends are honestly fairly introverted. I will say that there's a type of introvert that they do talk a lot with the people that they're very comfortable with, but their introvertedness shows more kind of with strangers. But if you're someone who you're not even comfortable talking to some of your close friends, face to face, I would say you start with you're on your phone texting, right? Start there. Start, like a kind of a text chain, back and forth. Then, once you're comfortable, with that, and you think, and I mean, and I was also going to say that a big part of communication is written communication. So, one, you're developing your communication skills right there, with the written aspect of it. But then, I think, you kind of break it up in stages. So you start with text, then maybe you start with, voice calls, or maybe you start with just like voice recordings, right? You guys send recordings back and forth. And then you graduate to, like a live call, then a video call, then like, you're, in person, then maybe you start with like a friend of a friend, and you kind of, what I mean? Kind of work the same thing. My advice would be to, just kind of, try to do what you're comfortable with, and then try to increment on that to get you to where you need to be. That would be my advice.
So if Taylor can also add on this, or both of you, what if now a person they say, okay, I've heard this, but they have a fear of rejection. Maybe I might talk to or text Taylor, and then he might not reply or respond to my message, or I might go and say hi to this person or stranger. They might look at me and be like,
Yeah,
"Who are
you're kinda
you?
rude.
Like,
Yeah, I know.
why are you saying hi to me?" Like they kind of fear of judgment or fear of rejection. So, what advice or what can you tell to that person right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you have to have confidence in your own work. If you have confidence in your work as an individual, you know that what you're showing to the person, whether if it's say for example you have a mathematical equation that you need to solve,
Sure.
okay, and you're collaborating with people, you're confident in your own work that this equation that I have, this problem that I have, if I use this equation, it's gonna be able to give me this solution, and you communicate that to the other people. Just be confident in the work that you're doing, and that's gonna give you more self-esteem. It's gonna build more self-awareness in terms of what you the confidence you have to be able to then go communicate your work, your finished product to other people. So it starts within yourself. If you build more confidence, have more self-esteem, it's gonna really portray to the way you communicate to other people. If you don't have confidence, it's gonna also be shown. You're not gonna be able to communicate effectively to other people.
Yeah. And so, what I'd like, or how I'd answer that question. And this is actually something that I kind of keep in mind, kind of when I talk to strangers, kind of more on the, hey, you're talking to a stranger piece, you say hi and they, kind of freak out at you. What I like to keep in mind is like, hey, if you're saying hi to somebody and they flip out at you, like they're in the wrong. Like either they're a bad person or they're just having a bad day. But like either way, like you did absolutely nothing wrong. You were being friendly. You're trying to, help develop yourself. And then, honestly, through conversations, with other people, the other person, they're developing their, abilities as well. So, if someone doesn't want to, better themselves or be polite, I would try to take comfort in the fact that, hey, they've just got something else going on. It's nothing for you to worry about. So that's something that I would like to keep in mind. And so you can kind of maybe try to base off some of your confidence with approaching them, kind of keeping that in mind that, hey, you're not doing anything wrong. And then can you repeat the first part of your question again? It was more of the like, hey, what if your close friends won't text you back?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, if you don't have a single person, that'll text you back,
You gotta review your relationships.
I'm trying to. I mean, if you don't have a single person, I don't know. Maybe I was gonna say maybe you try to like stay after school and talk to a teacher, but you know what I mean. If you can't even get someone to text you back, I don't necessarily know. Not even your parents, not even your sibling.
My siblings, my parent, we at home, right? We together. I can talk to them, and I know like people that they barely talk even to their siblings or their parent. They just locked into their like rooms. So that is not a problem. The problem is, so the question comes from the idea you gave, like you can start by texting, trying to make a conversation with somebody here and there. Then it comes where I can text a person and then I'm really saying, okay, I'm working on my communication skills. I want to get better at communicating with people. And then I take my phone, I try to text Taylor, and then Taylor take like 3 days to reply back. And then Taylor take 2 days. So does it gonna affect my communication, like my work, to become better into communication skills to the point like it's gonna I'll feel like let down and then give it up? Or is it just a normal thing that so some people can reply and others cannot reply to me?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you just kind of said there at the end. Some people are better at texting than others. And also they've got different things going on. So maybe they're just kind of busy. And so I'm not about to give like financial advice, but something that I hear all the time is make sure you diversify your portfolio. So maybe don't put all of your like communication development skills in the Taylor's basket. Especially if he's showing that hey, he's been too busy. You know what I mean, to kind of text you a couple times a day. And you can find like someone else. You know what I mean. There's got to be some nice person around somewhere. It's good. Maybe I'm just being optimistic, but that's I guess kind of been my my mindset with that. So that would be my advice. Yeah, just find somebody else.
Sure.
So let's speak about the misconceptions and the how can I say, the fact that a lot of people look at STEM in a negative way. The stereotypes in STEM, that STEM is too hard, math is too difficult, I can't get into it, all this other stuff. So I have a direct question for you, Rashaun. What do you think is an innovative way that teachers can teach students mathematical, just not only math, chemistry, everything,
all that stuff in general,
in an engaging way, so that
Yeah.
students are engaged and they're loving the content that's being taught?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is innovative in the sense that, I've heard of kind of teachers doing this, but I mean, I think it actually goes well when they do this. But I think demonstrating some of the real world applications of what's going on, of what you're trying to teach them. I think that's honestly maybe the best thing you can do. So, for example, a lot of people, they get really excited that you're trying to teach them chemistry, you're having them balance chemical equations, not everyone necessarily cares. If you show them how, you can pour, the correct amount of like vinegar and baking soda together and get salt that in theory can eat, but you probably shouldn't in case you messed up. But you know what I mean? If you show them the actual experiment, right, and, kind of walk them through like the actual science behind it, they'll be more engaged. And especially, if you're involving them, having them, kind of physically measure out, I mean? Like the amount of moles that you're putting, if I'm using that term right from my chemistry class, it's been a minute. But you know what I mean? I think maybe physically involving them and like directly bringing it up into like real world examples. So like something that I actually, told to a high school student, the other day, they were talking to me about how, hey, they don't really know, kind of what they want to do, I guess, in life, in general. And I mentioned that, hey, consider engineering. And he's like, yeah, people tell me that. And I'm like, all right, well, hey, watch this. I think you might find this cool. So I explained to him, and I apologize to the quantum people, the quantum physicist or whoever that's going to, correct me or whatever. But, at least at the macro scale, if you flip a coin, I asked him, hey, if you flip a coin, what are the chances that it lands on heads? And, he told me 50-50. And I said, yeah, that's what they say. But, in the real world, if you know exactly how much force you're flipping the coin with, the exact material of the coin, where you're putting the force on the coin, what the air currents are, the temperature of the room, etc., you can 100% predict exactly how that coin's going to land. It's not really chance, it's science. And so, there are people whose job it is to literally predict the future. I think that I think that, kind of really caught his attention, because it's like, hey, you're seeing these like, everyday things. And, you kind of go through life saying, oh, hey, there's a certain chance of this, certain chance of that, but kind of, recontextualizing the like concept of probability, to someone. I think that maybe helped them kind of gain a different perspective, a different appreciation for kind of, hey, what, STEM is. And so yeah, that was kind of like one example that I did, trying to convince someone that how to do STEM. It was by talking to them about hey, here's something that you see all the time. You don't really think much of it, but there's actually like a lot of math and science that go into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do want to address something that a lot of people do say. STEM's got so much math. Math is hard. I don't know if we want to talk about that later, right now.
Yeah, right now it's fine.
Okay, gotcha. But something that I like to make pretty clear to people, when I talk to them about going into STEM, is that yes, I was good at math, and hey, yes, I like math. But actually, I've had like 3 or more different roles, in my career so far, and I've done like real math in none of them, like not even algebra. Even though, I did 4 calculus courses in high school and stuff like that. I personally am not using the actual like calculus or even algebra at my day job. In order to become an engineer, yes, you do have to do all that math. But if you can do the math, but you just don't like it, there are plenty of engineering roles that are more about, understanding the science concepts and understanding the engineering concepts more so than actually crunching the numbers.
That's right.
And so that's something that I didn't know, when I was going through engineering school even. So I'm sure a lot of like high school students or even middle school students don't even know that. So that's something that I definitely like to make sure that people know that, hey, if you like science but don't necessarily like math, and like the math is scaring you away, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like once you're done with, engineering school, if you don't want to do calculus, you certainly don't have to. And the other thing I was going to say too is that, yes, math can be hard, but no one said you had to do it alone. And like as smart as a lot of other people say that I am, I did not go through engineering school alone. I had a really smart study group of people that helped me get through it. I made sure that I did all my homework. And even in between classes, I would go to the professors or the teachers' assistants and say, hey, here's what I did on my homework. Here, is how I approached this problem. Hey, can you correct me or, let me know kind of, where I went wrong. And, they'll do that for you. And then, so now, I'm getting 100 on my homeworks and, they're walking me through the steps. And so now, when I get to, my exams, I can actually afford to like, not necessarily do that well because of all the prep work that I did with getting all the homework and all the classwork's done. You know what I mean? When the average is like, I don't know, like a 50 on a lot of the exams,
Wow.
and you end up, with like a 50 as well, when you've done all your homework and you generally understand the concepts and, all that stuff, you'll still end up with a good grade. And so my point is you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. You just have to work smart. And, working smart means asking for help. Like no matter how smart you are, like, there's no shame in asking for help.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I really, really try to preach to people. Like, hey, you might not be good at math, but like you don't necessarily have to be. You just have to be willing to ask for help and you just have to be willing to work.
True.
And, with all the tutoring resources and, how, willing to help the teachers or the teachers' assistants or like other students, with all these different resources that you have, you can get through the difficult stuff and then you can do, what I mean? Like the physics or the chemistry or the biology that you really like doing, afterwards. So yeah, I don't want, like a fear of math to deter anyone from STEM. Because STEM is honestly, I mean, the foundation is math, and math is the way, or math is the tool that enables us to like model our world. But if you don't necessarily like it, but you like a lot of the concepts, like, please don't let math be hold you back from STEM. That's something I really like highlighting to people.
Oh, all right. I mean, that was really a clear explanation.
Very clear, yeah.
It was really clear.
Perfect.
So, what if you can tell us what is the biggest challenges that somebody can really face in the STEM industry when they are ready to get into the working place or working environment, and how can you solve those challenges?
Yeah. So, honestly, my biggest challenge, and I've actually had this conversation with a couple of people, and the common thing that I've been getting is just kind of the social aspect of it, just kind of
Yeah.
managing other people's kind of social quirks, and some people don't necessarily have maybe the best communication skills, and so trying to kind of increase your communication skills to kind of match that, or maybe it's not necessarily bad, it's just different, and kind of having to modify, how you're kind of doing stuff, what I mean, to, execute what you need to do. And so interestingly enough, I think the biggest challenge is honestly, kind of been that social aspect. I mean, I will say, for the most part, I haven't had, any like kind of crazy, complaints, maybe a crazy thing or two, in the professional space, but, yeah, it's kind of amusing how, you're doing all this, difficult math and science to get to where you are. But then those kind of like critical thinking and communication skills tend to be the kind of biggest, I guess, kind of pain points, I would argue, for a STEM person.
Yeah, talk about a little bit about the differences in terms of minorities not being too much in the STEM industry. When I say minorities, I'm referring to blacks, Hispanics, even women as well in general. And there's a lot of women that refrain or are scared of the STEM industry because they know that it's for the majority of the part, it's dominated by men. So talk about that culture change and how what can be done to be able to change that dynamic.
Yeah. So, On the, I'll start maybe with the racial minority part, and then I'll get to the kind of sex part. In the sense that, well, there's a lot of overlap, but I think there are some interesting nuances there. So, like I mentioned, I've done, some university recruiting trips for, some different companies, and, there aren't, unfortunately, there aren't very many, African American, engineers.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of go into it, these, events, trying to, make sure that I'm, giving, African American students like, a fair look that they, might not have gotten, before. But, the issue, and, I knew this from, my time in engineering school, is that, there aren't that many, you know what I mean, African American engineering students in the first place. And so, it's hard for companies to hire diverse when they don't have a diverse, kind of pool to pick from. And so something that, I've, started doing a lot, since I, got into the professional space, was doing a lot of these kind of like, middle school events or like elementary school events, trying to talk to kids about, what STEM is, why they should be, interested in STEM, reasons that they shouldn't be afraid of it. If they like certain things, because, I think a lot of times people don't necessarily know that, hey, there are options for them outside of like, music or sports, like, hey, if that works out for you, great. But, something more sustainable, is that this like STEM industry, and, they maybe don't necessarily have, these kind of STEM role models. And so, I've been, going out of my way trying to, kind of be that for, for a lot of people. And I think that, that kind of, trickles up, right? So, you inspire, an elementary school, middle school student to, pursue STEM, they go to these different activities, they kind of get their friends into it, eventually you're going to get more of them in college, and then you're going to get more of them, hired on. And then, we don't want, I'm not, no one advocates for diversity's sake. But the thing is that, different cultures bring different perspectives. And, the even different subcultures within, races, have different perspectives. And so, when you have a team full of like, diverse individuals, they're bringing diverse, perspectives, and that is enabling you to, that enables your team to have better kind of like critical thinking as a whole, because you guys have more diversity of thought. And so, that's why it's important to have, these diverse perspectives. And so, yeah, that's kind of my answer in terms of what can be done from like the racial kind of aspect. The sex aspect, sex, gender, I don't identify as a woman, but from a lot of the women that I've spoken to, some in STEM, some who maybe were in it and had the ability but just didn't really want to deal with it, is unfortunately there are a lot of times where like the culture isn't really welcoming to people that don't look like the people who predominantly make up that culture.
Yep.
And so like the common thing that I got from all the women that I spoke to about this was effectively to just be a better ally. And I know that's a buzzword, but like what I mean by that is, well, I mean, I think the absolute bare minimum is making sure you're not contributing to the problem. Like don't steal women's ideas and pass it off as your own. Make sure that if you need them to do something, you're including them on the emails that they need to be on, things like that, just don't be disrespectful.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, the absolute, like, no question, that's the absolute bare minimum. The point that, that actually merit or warrants a little more discussion, in my opinion, is the idea of kind of being a better ally. And, the reason why I mentioned that, and it's a really complicated topic that honestly I'm still struggling with myself, is, standing up to, the other people that, you kind of see, what I mean? Mistreating, like a woman or, even a person of color or something like that. And, in one sense, hey, the right thing to do is to stand up for everyone and, just kind of move on. But, in reality, people have to kind of weigh like, hey, is it worth it for me to stand up to the manager, to get the manager mad at me, to mess up my bonuses for this person that I barely know. Like, should, my family get like less money at Christmas time because I'm trying to do the right thing? And I mean, to a degree, the answer like could be yes. Not comparing, myself or anyone to like, MLK, Dr. King. But he, sacrificed his life for, the betterment of other people.
Yeah.
But hey, does everyone need to do that? Like, is everyone like, are you a bad person if you're not willing to sacrifice those sorts of things? So, like kind of going back to that example, right? Like, let's say you see someone, being really rude to a woman in a meeting, and you're the new person on the team. Like, how do you, go talk to someone with, 30 years of experience and telling them like, hey, look, like, how you kind of, talk to that woman, that's not really cool. And then, how do you do it in a way that doesn't then just make them mad at you too? And then,
Right.
make them resent you and try to sabotage your career. And, it's it's a very kind of slippery slope. And then, there are some times too where, maybe you misinterpret something, right? Like maybe, maybe that specific woman, it didn't bother them at all. And so now you're kind of fighting, a fight for kind of, you're fighting a fight that they didn't ask you to fight. And so then that becomes a whole, kind of complicated situation too. And I mean, I would say to kind of summarize it, like, in general, be a good person and at least like make sure that you're strongly considering standing up for other people, when you need, when you have the opportunity. And what I'll say too, and it's kind of funny because I see this sometimes in my own life, is like, hey, the issue also with not standing up for other people is like, hey, well, when you need people to stand up for you, they might not necessarily be willing to, put their career on the line to help you out too. And so, when everyone's kind of scared to, stand up to, these other people, no progress gets made. And so it's, but you know what I mean? But then, hey, like I said, like, is it like, how do you justify the risk?
Yeah, sure.
So it's a complicated situation in my opinion. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and people in the comments and stuff like that.
Definitely. My thoughts on that is just you brought up like really great point that we would like to hear from anybody who's listening or watching right now. But I want to get straight to the next question that what are some opportunities that a STEM professional can bring, to the world, to the global challenges, and to everybody that's willing maybe to join the STEM industry?
My answer to that, and it might be a little bit of a cop out, but like I mentioned, math is the tool that we use to model the world. So quite literally any problem, like STEM has some sort of impact into it. So like, if you name me like anything, like from like, I don't know, TikTok to like music to like, I don't know, shoes or makeup or whatever, there's STEM, involved in that. So, STEM ultimately, is going to make something more efficient, something more, maybe less, damaging to the environment, like more research into STEM, it's just overall going to make the world a better place. And, sometimes there are setbacks, right? Like when we first developed, like, the like car engine, right? It's going to start, causing more pollution, but, ultimately it did improve, the world's kind of quality of life. And then as we got more into STEM, we got more and more efficient, with that. And so, not sure if I necessarily answered your question with enough detail, but I mean, the answer is STEM is, a part of the answer to literally any world challenge.
I would agree to that. To the other point that you were mentioning in reference to just being able to put different cultures or the minorities and things like that, working on minorities and the gender gap and things, I think that's where it really mentorship and support really comes in place for those types of situations, and being able to stand up for yourself and for other people is extremely important, regardless of the outcome, because doing the right thing is it's very important. But coming back to the point that you just made, I'd like to touch on the global aspect of things, being able to benefit the global industry from the STEM perspective. So, what fields do you think are emerging fields that you think are going to be very, very big in the future that you think a lot of people should try to pursue in terms of just being able to continue um, advancing and innovating technology and engineering, STEM, and mathematics?
Yeah, I think the cutting edge of STEM right now is like what we talked about. I think the artificial intelligence kind of machine learning
Right.
kind of deal, and I think that like I mentioned, STEM is very diverse, and if AI isn't your cup of tea, there's so much more. And actually, I would probably argue most of the STEM roles right now aren't actually using AI. But in terms of like what's something emerging as like a kind of surefire bet, I would definitely say that's kind of your best bet. And I know there's another kind of like hot button topic, especially in like places like Texas, that'd be like the electrification of vehicles, and kind of trying to get away from using petroleum. The issue though is that developing these batteries that we're using for the electrification is also causing damage to the environment. A lot of the times we're using fossil fuels to get the electricity we put into the batteries. And so, trying to solve those STEM challenges, will ultimately, make the world a better place, right? Like cleaner energy. Once we can figure out how to make, clean batteries, that's going to help, you know what I mean, reduce the, pollution on like the, global scale. Sure. I was also gonna say another issue with batteries is that they don't necessarily have, the power density required to do like a lot of like really intensive stuff. So like, long range like trucks, if you're trying to like haul something across the country, you're not going to use an electric vehicle for
That's
that.
true, yeah.
We're not going to have like an electric like fighter jet with like afterburners yet. No,
It's not happening.
yeah, just from like a propulsion perspective, that's
It's almost impossible as of
I
right
mean,
now.
eventually we might be able to figure something out, right? But so there's that. And I was gonna say, and I hear about this all the time. And I mentioned a little bit about some of like the quantum stuff. But that's obviously going to be a really big field. We don't really have like production quantum computers yet, but like the way that the quantum computer like attacks the information exchange concept, that's gonna like revolutionize like a lot of our just different systems, just because of the like crazy processing power that we're going to be able to have with that. And so a lot of the real emerging things are kind of at the cutting edge of like computer science. But again, and by the way, higher processing power is just going to help with just like, again, literally anything.
Right.
Like, remember when I mentioned how, if you're trying to do a coin flip and perfectly predict all that stuff, you're not really going to do that math by hand. You're going to use some, computer. The issue though is that, the more calculations you're trying to do, the longer that's going to take. But my point is like a quantum computer is going to be able to, enable you to do much more complicated things a lot quicker. And that's just going to help all these different analyses and stuff like that in the world. And I think, and it probably, I'm not in biology, but I'm sure it'll help with like, like cancer research and cancer simulation.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say.
All those things as well. But yeah, I would say those are kind of the two big things. Yeah.
If I could add another emerging field that I could add before we close off the podcast, I would say is nanotechnology, as well as biomedical engineering, where there's where as technology is advancing in the medical field, specifically, and we're trying to begin to duplicate cells and work on putting certain technology inside of a person's body where it can go in small nanotechnology cells and things that can be able to do surgeries within the human body. I think it's in another field that's emerging. So it's not only in engineering. You don't have to be stuck in engineering or even only math. You can go into science where you're a doctor in a certain specific field.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of diversity in terms of STEM.
Yeah, fair enough. And just two really quick things. I promise will be quick. One, the nanotechnology bit. When things are small, like especially at like the nanometer level, that's when you're actually able to observe a lot of quantum effects. And so just understanding like the quantum realm, not just quantum computing, but just quantum effects in general. No one really understands it, and I could go off on a whole nother hour about this, but the quantum stuff applies to like the nanotechnology that you're bringing up too. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was, I was thinking about the whole thing about, hey, doing the right thing versus, kind of maybe doing the right thing for like, you and your family. I guess an idea I just kind of had, when you mentioned like mentorship is, another thing that maybe you can do is, find someone who, you know what I mean? Like, I guess like cares about, doing the right thing, who's maybe a little more like tenured, like, one of your mentors, and maybe bring up the, issue to them, and then maybe have them, like talk to the, the manager or the whoever else. So, a lot of times, I'm noticing that what you can say is right. But if people don't like the messenger, then there's an issue. But so maybe
it's about the way do you deliver it.
Well, yeah, but I was gonna say even sometimes you can deliver it perfectly. But if someone doesn't necessarily like you or they don't respect you because they think you're too young, like, hey, you've only been here 5 years. Who are you to tell me I've been here 30?
I see.
Maybe finding someone else who also has that level of experience that's also kind of I guess empathetic and values that diversity and keeping it or keeping it fostering an inclusive culture. Trying to work with maybe those mentors to kind of kind of help curb some of the like negative behavior. I guess that would be a way that you can kind of not necessarily get caught directly in the crossfire, while also making sure that you're kind of trying to do your part to be a good ally. And so should have thought about that a little earlier. But yeah, thank you for
it's a good perspective.
Thank you for
it's a good point that you brought up. It's very important.
So in short answer,
I'll try.
what is something that most people value but you don't?
Something that most people value that I don't. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't. I don't really know off the top of my head. I'm sorry. That's a terrible answer. Yeah, but I'm not really sure. I mean, what's the answer for you? Maybe that'll help me, figure something out.
For me, is being misunderstood. I accept the fact that you cannot be understood by anybody, by anyone, by everyone. So I know that everybody want to be understood, but for me, if somebody doesn't understand me, I feel like it's okay. And the second one is money.
Yeah.
So a lot of people value money a lot, that they sacrifice their life to have money, and then at the end they have to spend that money to get back their life. So
at times they don't even.
And they don't even.
Money is a big one actually.
Yeah. Sure.
Fair enough. Yeah, when you word it like that, I would save money as well. So like for example, like computer science majors make more than the major that I studied aerospace engineering, but I am not really passionate about doing computer science work all the time, and so I'm smart enough to do it, but it's not really something that I wanted to do, and so effectively I took a career pay cut to enjoy what I'm doing, and so that would be kind of an example. And that reminds me, sorry, one quick plug for STEM. The average or median US salary, when I looked that up, I think it was a little less than 60K. But I went on my university's website, and the average entry level salary for my degree, like just a 4-year degree, was over 87,000. Yeah. So the average for all the median, middle 50%, right? If you're making 60K a year, you're doing better than 50% of the country. But the average graduate from my school with my degree starts out at like 80 something,
and that's on the lower end actually.
Well,
if you're for depending on the field, actually.
Right. And where you are, cost of living and all that stuff. And it was actually a lot lower when I graduated. So that's it's good to see that, what I mean? A lot of people are, doing well. It was in like the 70s, but then also the average, salary, what I mean, was less too, inflation's not, inflation's outpacing cost of living and salaries. And, that's a whole nother podcast. Right. But, just another kind of plug for STEM is that, hey, you're doing fun work. You're compensated relatively well. And it's attainable for everyone. You just gotta work smart. So
Definitely.
that's that.
In 1-2 words, what is the best advice you have ever heard, received, or given?
Let's see. So, well, the best advice that I've given, in my opinion, was kind of somewhat what I just said, in the sense of, like, what I was saying about school in terms of like, working smart, surrounding yourself with good people, and, coming together to solve a problem, not trying to do everything for yourself and being willing to ask for help. I think that's definitely the best advice that I've ever, like given, because I know a lot of people, they look at kind of asking for help as like a sign of weakness, or like, a lot of people think or are worried that, hey, if you ask a question, you'll come off as stupid. And I mean, I know that some people think that, and, sometimes people even think that of me. But like, what I mean? I'll just ask all my questions, make sure I learn what I need to. And then, what I mean? When I have a good test score, right? I think that kind of, closed the, the conversation. But so in short order, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's the best advice that I've ever given.
And what is the worst?
The worst advice that someone's ever given me. Yeah, I'm not sure what like the all-time worst advice that I've gotten, but like recently, and it wasn't necessarily given like directly to me, but like I overheard a kind of a conversation where someone was talking about like a negative situation that they were having at work, and one of the leaders, I overheard them say like, hey, just kind of try to stay out that person's way and just don't. Just try not to stick out. Wow. And I'm just kind of like, why would we, what I mean, want to have like a culture, what I mean, where like that's the answer, you're having a problem with someone and the answer is like, stay out of their way, or like, try not to worry about them. It's like, no, we should be trying to, what I mean, like help them understand that their behavior is not conducive to a good workplace environment. That's right. When we kind of let these sort of things slide, that's why they continue to perpetuate. And so, that's why it's good and important to be an ally. But yeah, the worst advice I guess is maybe like don't stand up for yourself.
That's great. And we are going to, unless Taylor you have something to say, but we are going to finish this podcast with this idea that I read from a real podcaster, Steven. He said, "You might not be where you hope to be in 6 months or a year from now, but if you start taking small steps in the right direction, I can guarantee that you will be much further along than if you did nothing at all."
Atomic Habits. And we had a few weeks ago, we had Ben on the podcast, and he's talking about staying the course.
It's staying the course.
Like small increments.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so just keep stay the course, and you're gonna keep progressing. It may not happen in 6 months, a year. But stay the course. You're gonna get there.
Definitely.
Don't give up.
Sorry, I promise. Two real quick things about that. One, that's exactly the advice that I was giving in terms of, if you're super shy, super introverted, and you want to develop these communication skills, you start small and you increment.
Yeah.
And then the last thing was, I just wanted to mention how in calculus, with an integral, it's an infinite sum. So you start at no sum, and then you do an infinite amount of sums, and you eventually get to your actual end goal. And so that's what's kind of interesting, just calculus from a theoretical perspective, like making infinity practical. But so yeah, that's just you mentioned incrementing in steps, and I was like, I gotta throw some calculus in there.
So we are so glad to have you, and we would appreciate your insight, your smartness, and all your idea advices. It was really educational. we would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Hope I
Thanks,
didn't take up too much
and
time.
for everybody
all.
who's listening to us right now, we really thank you to make it this long, and we have appreciate your time, your support, and we hope to see you to the next episode. So please share, and if this is your first time to really listen to us or see us, subscribe, follow, so that you can really be part of our community where we talk about challenges in youth life, either it's in relationships, businesses, education, and in life in general. So we hope to see you to the next one. If you enjoy it, keep it for yourself.
All right.